Welcome to the Life in Rhythm podcast, where we hope to equip rhythm communities to be formed by God, with one another, for the good of others, in the valley as it is in heaven.
Welcome to the Life in Rhythm podcast, season 2. We are diving right into what it means to discover gospel clarity. And our good friend Wade Lewis is joining us today. Thank you, Wade.
And thank you for having me.
How are you?
Oh, living the dream.
Living the dream.
With elevators in it. I don't know.
Perfect. Well, I want to say, if you haven't already listened to season 1, episode 16, is that right? Mm-hmm. Episode 16, Wade shared his story journeying through and battling brain cancer. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how gospel clarity has refocused his life and how he's taken a full measure of his whole self and how he's applied that really to the whole world. And he has some really cool stories of just journeying to the Dominican Republic this last month and just a perspective change that he's had in those 3 elements. And so we were just talking just before we went live how death, when we knock on the doorstep of death, when we're in the 4th quarter or post-game, we're looking at how we played. And very few people get this opportunity that you have. And I've heard you say a number of times that you count it a blessing, which just blows my mind. And I know you said that in episode 16, that this is continually a blessing for you, that's refined you, and that's made you more in the image of Jesus, that took brain cancer to kind of wake you up. And so I want to just dive right into some maybe new learnings that you're discovering about the gospel, about yourself, and about the impact that you can make in the whole world.
Yeah. Earlier in episode 1, you guys were talking about kind of the Western church, how rich it is. We're sitting here in great air conditioning, and it's 150,000 degrees out, and we're sitting in nice air conditioning. And so, like, I've had this kind of, I call it a leaving Laodicea moment. That like the Western church is so rich that we just have no idea. And so like as soon as I had brain cancer and started, looking at things, I was like, oh my gosh, like so much has been wrapped up around identity, wealth, a paycheck, a job, just all the things that the West, and again, good things, but not, not the ultimate. And so it was losing the job, which was, the right call. I could no longer perform executive functions the way that I did before. And so it was losing that. So it was losing all the things that had always kind of vied for that throne in my life. And so when those are ripped away, like, it becomes easy. And so that's when I talk about it was easy for me. Well, I mean, it took brain cancer. It took somebody saying, you could die in 30 days, or, the median is 18 months. And I just hit that last week.
Wow. Dang, man. And what I love about you is that you have, we talked about this in the previous episode. So talking about hope and talking about perspective on the kingdom. But it's not been pie in the sky. It's not been rainbows and unicorns. There's been some really deep-rooted stuff that so, the surgeon took out the tumor. God is taking out a lot of different things that were buried up in your heart. And so I would love for you to just kind of be invulnerable here, talk a little bit about some of those uprootedness things that you've kind of discovered post-surgery in this last 18 months.
Yeah. So I was doing the outwardly right things from a perspective. I was working for my employees, so servant leadership, all these different things, right? I'm trying to get people raises, trying to add benefits, trying to do all these things but it wasn't like it was for my name and my greatness and not for them, because as I look back, I wasn't really concerned with them. I was so prideful that I wasn't empathizing with any of the people that, that I was trying to help. I was just so smart that, hey, if you knew what I knew, you would want these things. And so let me build this world around you, for you. And so God, right? He has to be in the middle of that, because I'm taking care of the least of these. I'm doing all these things, but my motivations weren't there. And so when that came away and I looked at like, oh my gosh, like that's really what I was aiming for, was more like, kind of my career, I wanted this movement to happen, but like I needed to be at the top of that movement. Mm-hmm. And so, so brain cancer strips up, it took my position away. It took, a lot of things away. And so it left me kind of sitting with my thoughts on, hey, have you been doing this for you or for the kingdom?
Wow. I want to come back to that, but I want to frame it up in this question of, how has death changed your perspective on the gospel?
Yeah, I was thinking before we started, a very similar question. Just how is the gospel still the gospel for you?
Yeah.
How is that still good news?
Oh man, yeah. So, my sorry. So I grew up in the church, had this, made my faith my own at some age. But then when you are told by the doctor that you may have, a month to live, 18 months, whatever it may be, you really start, kind of distilling down. And so I kind of put everything that I believed out there, and then I started jumping up and down on it. And going back through any question that I had, just things that I was too scared to ask. And then I was like, whoa, hold on. If this is the God that I'm throwing everything behind, he's stronger than my questions. He's bigger than my questions. And so I asked those questions, and kind of the elevator of faith dropped down a couple more floors, and it became, so sturdy. And so like I now, so it's so purified now that it's wake up, if there's manna, do the Lord's work, and then, at around 9:00, remind yourself you're not God and you need rest. And then if you wake up and there's manna again, you run it back. And then if there's not, you're feasting with Jesus tonight. And so, the clarity is like literally the entire life's the gospel. We get to he lovingly came down, saved us from where we were. And now we get to partake in the kingdom until he brings us home. And so now I used to have to go to work each day and all this. And now I said I wanted to be in ministry, full-time ministry forever, but I couldn't afford it. and that's what I told everyone. Like, if you ask all my colleagues for years, I would always say, I want to be in full-time ministry, but gosh, they don't pay enough. And so, I was always trying to lower my lifestyle so that I could, eventually do it. And then brain cancer made it happen immediately. So
yeah, we are actually sitting in your garage right now. This is makeshift studio. Yeah. So
this was my home office, and this is where I got to work for a great company out of Denmark who has 500,000 employees, and I got to take care of a lot of those employees along the way.
So as you've been journeying through this, I love the image of you jumping up and down on the stack of beliefs, and kind of just the elevator continues to go down deeper and deeper, and there's deep rootedness and deep sin that's tangled up that we have to throw off so we can run this race. There's also a lot of people, I think about it as a relay race. There's a lot of people along the way that have been in our corner. Your wife has been with you through all of this journey. So pre-cancer, a whole life has been lived. And you make this reference, I think, in the last episode, but just talking about how you started everything early. You had your journey, your life was marked by early markings of growing up fast, in a pretty rough home, and then going through, meeting your wife at an early age, getting married at an early age, starting kids at an early age, and now you have 2 grown adults and a sophomore in high school.
18, 20, and 15.
And so I'm sure they remind you daily of who you were and the refinement that's continuing. Talk a little bit about that. Just, was there a surprise there when God revealed, hey, you were like, your motive was pretty jacked up here? I'm sure there wasn't a surprise to your wife. So talk a little bit about just how you've been able to journey through this, kind of pre-cancer to now the refinement process of what God's doing, and how each of your family members has played a significant role in that.
Yeah. So I was married early. So yeah, just didn't have the wisdom, right? Had the energy and and time to do things, but not the wisdom. And so I abandoned my family, more or less for, the first majority of our marriage, 10, 15 years, between doing good things, volunteering, parachurch organizations, that sort of thing, and then getting pretty involved in work. And so didn't have a deep relationship with anyone really in the family. And so we'd been married 22 years, or we are married 22 years, and 15, 18, and 20, you'd think, you got to have deep relationships. Well, not if you're gone, Monday through Friday, and then come home on the weekends and, and try and have a couple parties, coach the kids, take them fishing, that sort of thing. And so brain cancer for me took me off the road and just allowed me to try and reconcile with 4 people that I abandoned, practically.
Mm-hmm. What has been any practices that you've implemented now as a family, or things that you're doing as a family to kind of rebond or reconnect?
I think so. I'll do it as quick as I can. But the best example is the Spotify rule, where the first time, so I came home from surgery. Surgery was supposed to be a quick one, and the cancer that they thought that I had at that time was a 90% survival rate. And so we went into everything thinking it was great, and then find out it was, double the surgery, and then it was the worst type of cancer. And so it was a, 98% morbidity rate after, 90 or 18 months. So it was a very different thing. So come home from the hospital, and on the first day back, my family wants to just take care of me, love me. And so I sit down to eat, and they're eating, and then there's no music on. And so they hop up and say, "Oh, Dad, let me throw music on real quick," because I'd had the Spotify rule of, if we're eating, we're not animals. You don't need to horse chomp, and so we can just have music on. And so that when they ran up to do that, I was like, "Oh, no, stop. If I hear you chomping, that means you're alive and I'm alive, and everything past that's gravy." And so that was the first one. And so just trying to understand how my wife and kids were all created, how God created them, and then how can I assist in helping them find their purpose. So that's where we're at now.
Dang, dude.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
I remember hearing the story behind, the sculptor Rodin, who sculpted the Thinker. Mm-hmm. And, he put that in front of these gates in a church that depicted eternal judgment. Very graphic. Mm-hmm. And when asked, why did you make that? I mean, nobody really knows about sculpting. Yeah, you don't know the history except for the David and the Thinker. Those are the only 2 that people really know about. But when asked, why did you do that? Why did you make the Thinker? And then why did you put that before the gates of this church? And his response was, I think the real importance of thinking begins when we start to contemplate death. And so he put the Thinker in front of these gates so that people would walk by and pause in their everyday life and just for a moment contemplate their death. And even last week on Instagram, I saw Donald Miller. This is one of the first things he does every morning. He says, I wake up
Write my obituary.
I write my obituary.
Yeah.
I know.
Wow.
And then he's like, it's stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like, and then I review my 10-year plan and then my 5-year plan, then my 1-year plan. I'm like, bro, you need more kids. And adopt
But I
somebody.
like that.
But he's contemplating his death. He's
Absolutely.
contemplating the end.
Because you don't get to 5 years, 10 years, or even even today, exactly
Yep.
what you're saying with manna,
Yeah.
until you recognize and realize that you're not guaranteed the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see within like all 150 Psalms in the Old Testament, I see that pattern. I see them crying out for God as if he doesn't answer them. We were talking about this earlier. If God doesn't answer them, they're screwed. They're done with. They're dead.
Yeah.
They say things like that's their language of I am so desperate that if you don't speak to me right now,
Two hands up.
It's physical.
Yeah.
It is physical of I surrender. I need you. And you're living this out day in, day out. In the littlest things, Spotify things, all the way to the end. And I was just journaling even a month ago of God, I need to learn how to lose better. Like before I lose things, I need to just learn how to let go and lose. Because Jesus clearly says, you want to gain life? You really want abundant life? You're going to have to lose your life. Like you're going to have to give it up. You're going to have to surrender.
Not my will, but yours.
Yeah. Yeah. Not my will, but yours. And so one of the things I'm hearing you say is in this journey of keeping the gospel, that it takes for every single one of us stomping up and down in our beliefs and asking those hard questions and keeping eternity in mind when we do so.
Yeah. Because the more solid your foundation is, the bigger jump you get, right? I mean, look at beach volleyball versus indoor volleyball, right? Their verts, they have the same vert when they test them, but it's not in the sand, and so like that's a great, analogy of that. And so like the more work you do, questioning those things and then finding the answers are so beautiful. And so, and I may have even talked about it, but sometimes like where you have to search for that is in the back of a cave and it's dark and dark and dark and there's nobody back there and you're calling out, but then you find the honey and it's the sweetest honey that you've ever had. And so, God is there and sometimes it's dark all around us. So.
Yeah. The two things I hear you saying in all this is it takes hard questions. Don't be afraid of the hard questions. But I also hear you saying it takes deep community. And those two things combined, those deep connections is what is providing for you.
Ah, yes.
In this season, this smile and this posture.
The deep community. My rock tumbler? Is that what you're talking about?
Tell me about the rock tumbler. I wanted to, yes.
My rock tumbler. So my rock tumbler went up to see Mandy's parents a couple weeks ago in Washington, and they had all these gorgeous rocks, and they tumbled them and that sort of thing. And so I was thinking about that in the Christian life. So you can have too few. It's about having the right amount of rocks in your rock tumbler. So if you have 2 rocks in your rock tumbler, or just one. So if you're cruising through life on your own, just by yourself, you will change over time, but that's going to take a long, long time. And then if you pack that rock tumbler completely full and there's no friction in there and nothing, none of those rocks will happen. And so it's finding the right amount of people in your life that like, because I can't see my rough edges. I don't think they're rough edges. They're great. I mean, it's, I've been promoted to the highest places. So how can that personality be bad? Oh, wait, you're going to tell me how it's bad because I hurt you. And then you're going to, in love, come to me and say, hey, dude, when you said that yesterday, what were you going through? But like, that's only if we understand that we're in this rock tumbler together. And the reason we're in this rock tumbler is because God said, hey, hop in this rock tumbler so it knocks off the edges, as you guys do life together.
That's good.
I love that.
And so I want to take, when kind of the people in my life, I want to have like a little ceremony where, they come in and we pick out a rock out of the unfinished one. And so we're going to find the Adam rock and we're going to find the Matt rock, and then we're going to put them in there. And then, every couple weeks when we hang out and talk about the word, we're going to pull them out, and we're going to look at them, and we can take little pictures, along the way. But, that's the Christian life. It doesn't happen overnight. Like you get tossed in the tumbler overnight. That's a one-time thing. But, like this whole life, it's just tumbling.
At an early age, my mom and dad got me a rock tumbler. I think I was like 7 or 8. I'd been collecting all these rocks, and they got me a rock tumbler. And I remember going out, in our family farm and picking out rocks and putting them in there. And the transformation that these seemingly really ugly rocks, after you tumble them and then you polish them, dude. Yeah. And we don't want to hear it, but it does take that kind of rumbling to like be transformed. It takes that kind of friction. You don't get deep connections with people without honesty, without vulnerability. And you got to want that. I mean, you really got to welcome it of, no, tell me. Yeah. I'm examining myself. I'm asking God to examine me, but I need your help.
Do you feel like there was an openness to that pre-cancer or a guardedness? And then how do you feel like that's changed or shifted over the last 18 months?
Say that again.
So just the open, like the willingness to have other people speak into your life.
So you spoke about my rough upbringing earlier, and so still haven't worked all the way through that, hence the tears. But I did have a guy, the Lord dropped a guy in named Jeff Stevens, who's a pastor, but him and I worked together for years, but he came in and was, father, mentor, that sort of thing. But I respect him. I saw, what he was doing. And so, the Lord provided this guy who gave me great guidance along the way. And so he was vulnerable with me, but was very clear from the first time we met. He said, hey, so I am going to pour everything I have into you, but it can't stop with you. You have to, I need to meet my spiritual grandchildren. And so,
that's beautiful.
And so like, I was blessed by that, so like that was it, 20 years old. I had a strong Christian guy come into my life and really, and I was looking for that. Everyone wants a dad, right? And so, Jeff kind of came in and stepped in to fill a lot of that role, and then, started pointing me towards the eternal Father who, doesn't lose it, or doesn't, struggle. So.
That's huge, man. And there's so many guys that we talk to on a regular basis.
Yeah.
We have guys down on Thursday nights that just want to be seen, want to be heard, want to be known, want to be valued.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of deep woundedness, not necessarily from fatherlessness, not everyone, but there's a deep pittedness within men in general, within our culture, that is void of that type of relationship, that don't have that type of connection or don't feel like they can. I read a study the other day that talked about 80% of men in America don't have one person that they can go and turn and talk to about a deep issue in their life. And that, to me, has to stop, and I hear you talk about that a lot with the guys that you're mentoring and discipling. What are some things that, just from that vantage point, from a disciple making or mentoring standpoint, how has that shifted in the last, in this season for you?
Yeah. So, kind of understanding that you don't have to. I think in season 2, episode 1, you guys talked about we're all evangelists. And so, in this, I lost it.
So in the mentoring and discipling, like how you've shifted your view.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's kind of the Care Bear stare. So and I'll try and get through it as quick as I can because half the audience won't get it. But so it's.
So do they need to Google
Care Bears.
Care Bears?
Yeah. Google
Okay.
Care Bears, Care Bear Stare, that
Okay,
sort of
cool.
thing.
Okay.
But if we were meant to, so if God's up here, we're meant to reflect His goodness out to everyone. And so my biggest learning has been you don't have to build up this goodness and all the fruits of the Spirit and stuff before you go out into the world. So when you become a believer, all those gifts are given to you immediately, and so you don't have to so you don't have to wait. Yeah. And so like I'm able to tell people, hey, so just stop. Like so if it's if your mirror is straight up and down, then you look like the world. So if the world's here, God's here, and then we're here. And so if you look like the world, then you're just imaging them. And if it's just you and God, then it's just that. But He meant you to be at a 45 angle so that His goodness comes down, hits you, goes out into the world, comes back, and then goes up into His nostrils. Right?
Yeah.
And so like. That doesn't take you doing anything like that. It just takes you reflecting His goodness and His love, His grace, and that sort of thing. And so just, discipling young people in that, like, no. Like, you don't have to be like, well, I'm going to suck at this for the first 20 years. No. Like, you have the same power that I have today, and so it kind of changes the game a little bit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a cool analogy, man. I mean, Care Bear Stare's got to go.
Yeah. We got to find something else.
But I just think about, when people are in the world, like you're saying, the mirror's straight up and down, and they're reflecting the culture around them. And then over time, if you spend enough time around churched people and Christians, your posture becomes almost like this, where you're loving God so much, but you're culturally irrelevant and you're not engaging with the culture around you. And so just the posture to remain in the world, not of the world, to be in the love of God, but radiating that. I've always loved that image of, that's been a prayer of mine since I was a teenager, radiating the love of God, radiating the light of God, and just this image of a mirror.
Yeah.
So as you reflect the love of God to the world, and as your mirror is positioned like this, one of the questions I really wanted to ask you comes out of Philippians 4, where the Apostle Paul says, now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable, right, pure, lovely, admirable. Think about these things that are excellent, worthy of praise, and then just keep putting into practice all that you've learned and received, like all you've heard from me and everything you've seen me doing, and then the God of peace will be with you. So I'm just curious, as we kind of wrap up this conversation, what are those practices that you are putting into place? Like, how are you very practically in this season of your life keeping your thoughts fixed on Jesus, on the gospel, with all the distractions around you?
Yeah. And again, this is a little easier with brain cancer, right? Where I have to go in and get a brain scan every 90 days where they give me the Julius Caesar, good or bad. Wow. And so that intentionality kind of, so I went from long-term planning to just kind of day by day. So like today was you three guys that are here in this room, my family, anyone that I'll see later, like that's it. That's the whole thing on my plate. And so as I'm sitting there showering in the morning, I'm just praying through my day and just praying through, just these, few things. And because there's nothing else I can do, right? It's only this. And so like, and then if you wake up again tomorrow and then it's a different set of people and so like it's just day by day, but then you also have those long-term plans and that sort of thing. But so for me, it's just this, like looking at and saying, hey, so I'm the only person who can be in this place today. Like that, if I don't say the things, if I don't, nobody else is going to do it. So nobody's going to pop into my house and talk to my kids about, love, grace, anything like that if it's not me. And so like when you sit there and think about that in the shower as you're praying, like that changes your thoughts about like what's important today, down to it's just 5 interactions I'm going to have with 5 different people today.
Bro, it's so good because it just draws me into the Sermon on the Mount And when in the Message version, when Eugene Peterson says in Matthew 6, other translations say, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, live day by day. And Eugene Peterson translated that where Jesus is saying to us, what I'm trying to get you to do is relax and soak yourself in God reality in your everyday life. Just day by day, moment by moment. And it also makes me think of the Last Dance documentary, Michael Jordan.
Yes.
You remember when they say, like, what was his secret? Like, how did he soar above so many other players? And there's these long interviews about that he was a mystic, that he was able to be fully present in the moment. And so for us as followers of Jesus, I think that that's a huge part of Jesus's joyfulness, his happiness, the reason why people were attracted to him to tell me about the good news, tell me about the gospel, because he wasn't in yesterday and he wasn't too far ahead of what the Spirit was doing. He was really in that moment of living in the good news, kingdom of God, here and now, because we can't be anywhere else. I mean, in our phones, digitally, sure, we can enter into this world, but we're still here. We're still embodied here. So that is so good. That's something to fight for, man.
I love that.
Yeah, and that so in that same study, 10 years ago, they asked the same question, and people had, I think, an average of 5 or 10 people that they could go to. And now that's, fast forward, we're the most connected we've ever been, right? So that number has to go from 5 to 10 to 20 to 30, right? No, it's at 0. It's at 0 to 1. And so, like, that's,
So good. There's so much we could talk about, and there's so much that God has done in you and through you in this season, and I've been blessed by it. So I want to say thank you.
For real, bro. Thank you.
For being present. Thank you for being used by God and for the kingdom. And I know there's been so many people that have contacted us through listening to episode 16 and just been blown away and been marked by your words and encouraged and challenged. And so I count it a blessing every day to be your friend and to be on the journey with you. So as we leave today, I want to encourage all of our guests to answer this one question, and that is how, and very simply, how do you experience a life in rhythm?
That's good. I lacked rhythm for a long time and was just kind of tossed to and fro. So it truly is, like this big narrative, of why are we here? Why is Earth here? What am I doing here today? Like embracing like the bigger picture and then narrowing it all the way down to, what I can do today. So for me, it's, it's being in the Word, it's connecting with people, fasting, getting out, exercising when I can, when this cap here allows me to. So,
Awesome. Thanks, Wade. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, bro. Much
Thank
love.
you, guys. Love you guys.
See you next week. Peace.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Life in Rhythm podcast. We are on mission to live freely and lightly with one another for the good of others. Peace.